We have today with us three speakers on what I believe to be a very important topic, namely the possibilities of nuclear power and why we had this problem on Fukushima. Regrettably, we do not have many younger members here who all seem to be fascinated by Fukushima. Of course, that's the nature of the news business. You always go for the hot topic and ignore the fundamentals. But this question of the viability of nuclear power is totally fundamental. China already has 30 plants in production. Russia has 30. The Europeans are starting to revive interest. Of course, the interest in renewables is going up and it's to be welcomed greatly. I myself have installed solar, but I know from experience that solar is not totally reliable. However, before I commit myself to any ideological position, let me introduce our three speakers today. They are all long experts in this field, particularly Mr. Kaneko, Kumao, who I met many years ago and gave me a very good impression, and who has a long background in this topic, going back to when he was in the Gaimasho, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in charge of nuclear affairs. And then we have Mr. Kawata with the Japan nuclear cycle development, which you know was the next stage of Japan's nuclear ambitions, including involving Monju and Rokkasho, which have all been put on hold or cast aside because of the phobia which has now developed in Japan about nuclear energy, an example of which we had just a few days ago when the former Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Koizumi, was here speaking in a very excited way to a very large audience. And then we have Mr. Ono, who is an energy consultant. He's worked very much with Mitsui. Between them, I think they'll give us a good rundown on the whole question of nuclear energy. I might add that I myself am not without experience. I had 3 years on the Nuclear Safety Anzen Inkai, Nuclear Safety Commission. I can tell you in that for TEPCO, for talking mainly about Fukushima, I can tell you that in those 3 years, I never once heard any mention of earthquakes, tsunami, whatsoever. It was totally absorbed in technical questions, which is very much, I think, the Japanese personality. They like this small, minute problem and ignore the large problem. I was also on a committee for the after the Kobe earthquake. And then they'd made no preparation for roads being blocked, fire engines not being able to get to the sites because roads were blocked, or even worse. If I can tell you now, and I haven't if there had been any wind that day, and normally there is a wind from the west at that time of year, the whole of Kobe would have been obliterated. Then, as I say, we had Fukushima. It's this strange lack of mentality of preparation in the mind of the Japanese. I got one explanation later that if you think of bad things will happen. Well, that's a strange way to run a nuclear energy. Today I will call on our three speakers who will speak to us in their hard-won English, and I hope there will be copies of their book. It has a rather strong flavour. That Mr. Koike, the mayor of governor of Tokyo, Miss Koike, Kumiko, and Koizumi are both telling lies when they oppose nuclear energy. That's a rather strong word. And Mr. Kaneko has just shown me his last article in the Denki Shimbun, where he also has words to say to the Foreign Minister, Kono. So between them, I think they will give us a lot to think about. And I just wish and I will do everything I can to try and make sure that their advice, their words, receive some distribution. They give, in this book, which I hope that you will receive, they give very detailed advice on how to, even if you do have a tsunami, even if you do have an earthquake, how to prevent the damage. And as I say, as I saw on this 3 years of the experience, none of that ever emerged, but it will be in this book. I call on our three speakers, beginning with Mr. Kaneko, is that okay?
Okay.
To give us the information we need so badly.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kumao Kaneko. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Clark for his kind introduction. I'm sorry, I got hay fever, polonosis, I think, and influenza a few weeks ago, and I still have difficulty in voice. Apparently, I have a big frog in my throat, so you may not hear me very clearly, but I'll try to speak as slowly as possible. This afternoon, I'm very grateful, we are very grateful for this opportunity to speak at the FCCJ, which I understand is one of the oldest and most prestigious clubs of its kind in the world. Today's topic is nuclear energy, particularly Japan's nuclear energy policy in the wake of Fukushima nuclear accident, exactly 7 years ago. For the past 7 years, we, the Japanese people, have been making soul-searching efforts, a kind of national reckoning, I think, over whether we should continue using nuclear energy for making electricity, or how to live with it, with all its merits and demerits. It is generally said that majority of Japanese people, not just in Fukushima, but also throughout the country, are very much opposed to the continued use of nuclear energy. In fact, some of the well-known and influential persons, like Mr. Koizumi, Mr. Hosokawa, or indeed Mr. Kan, the three former prime ministers, are very much opposed. By the way, I heard that Mr. Koizumi and his group held press conference, perhaps right here in this room, last week. I wish I had heard it myself. Well, two other persons I want to mention in this context are Ms. Koike and Mr. Komiyama, the former president of Tokyo University, who are also quite critical about nuclear energy, and they are advocating renewable energies. You notice that all these gentlemen and the lady happen to share the same family name starting with K. Koizumi, Koike, Komiyama, and now Kono. Well, you may add, but different context. But anyway, 3 Ks or 4 Ks. In fact, when we, three of us here, wrote a book about nuclear energy last fall, the book's first title mentioned only Mr. Koizumi. Then Ms. Koike, governor of Tokyo, joined forces with Mr. Koizumi during the campaign for general election in October. And jointly they started shouting zero nuclear, Genpatsu zero. So I decided to add Miss Koike's name before Mr. Koizumi. That's why the book is called Koike Koizumi, that's Genpatsu no Uso. Now, as Professor Clark mentioned, Uso sounds rather strong in Japanese word. Mr. Trump likes to use it. So this is not really the title, is not my taste. I wanted a little bit more scholarly title, or neutral title. But anyway, with this title, I hope the book may have caused some controversy, or might have been sold, if not a million seller or bestseller. But we'll see whether this title was a tactical success or a failure. We'll see. Incidentally, the book was written, manuscript was written long before the summer, last summer, and should have been published before general election in October. But unfortunately, the book was published only 2 weeks after the general election. That was too bad, most unfortunate. But anyway, the book, I think this is probably the only book of its kind supporting vigorously nuclear energy as a vital source of energy for this country. As you see, I have 10 copies of the book, and I would like to give free copies to you if you are interested in reading it. So please come to see me after the speech. It's, I think, 1,500 yen if you buy it in the bookstore. This afternoon, my time is very much limited, so I will not go into further details of the content of the book. Let it be sufficient to cover only a few important points. Those points are all in the resume paper in your hand. Now, let's turn to point 1. Well, that is obvious, so if you go through, that's okay. Let's move to point 2. About the comparison between Japan and Germany. Japanese people, press, like to make comparison between Japan and Germany, Germany being the forefront runner in the use of renewable energies. But they are wrong. So Mr. Ono will speak about this later. Point 3, that's about nuclear energy, safety after the accident. And Mr. Kawata is an expert on that. He will deal with. Point 5, the importance of, well, this is rather technical, but point 5 is the importance of nuclear fuel cycle policy of Japan, especially the Rokkasho reprocessing plant in Aomori-ken. And on that, Mr. Kawata will address the issue. Now, remaining point 6, 7, 8 are actually my own subjects, but I'm afraid I have already running out of time. Therefore, I would like to leave those and other subjects to leave to the further later discussion during the question and answer session. So that's all for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You had a problem with the title of your book, Mr. Kawata, but I'm sure you'll attract a lot of attention also with the contents. Mr. Kaneko. Next, our speaker is Mr. Kawata, who touched on the very important topic of...
My turn. Mr. Ono, please. Ono first.
Ono first. Who is a consultant on energy problems. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Clark. And ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ono, O-N-O. And today's title, my speech title, is German Energy Transformation and its Implications to Japan. So I may use my small note distributed on your desk. It's titled Resume A. Ono. In accordance with this black dot, I like to explain what I like to emphasize.
ないです。それいただけますか。コピーしてきます。このコピーがないです。
ない。
すぐしてきますよ。いいですか。いただけますか。
いや、あるよ、どっかに。
送ってきて。
彼女も。
一番最初にお送りした3人分、レジュメとして。
Sorry that it's not distributed yet on your desk, so it's coming. So before that, anyway, to avoid time, may I start? Well, your people may know that German government has been promoting in the past 18 years so-called Energiewende. That's literally energy transformation from conventional power to renewables power. That's their aim, and it's called Energiewende. And passing 18 years of their effort, I can find out already result of their effort. And their major aim were, firstly, reduction of carbon dioxide. It's a first aim. And the second aim, to improve their power economy, lower their electricity rate for the people. And the third aim was to realize more stable power supply. These three aims were fundamental factors and aims of Germany. And what happened now? Then the first dot, black dot, I say Germany was successful in terms of expanding capacity of renewables like this. Here, solar and wind, this so much. And now their total renewables capacity came up with this 113 gigawatt. Gigawatt is a huge unit. So they got, larger than their maximum demand, as large as 140%, 140, only by renewables. So they could attain first aim, okay. But another result was, it have proved that non-dispatchable solar and wind could not displace conventional dispatchable power plants like thermal and nuclear. This is a very important point. Probably, many people don't recognize that. Dispatchable means, that power plant can supply power in accordance with demand, demand. More particular, specifically, that plant can supply power in accordance with instruction which come from control center. So control centers organize everything. So, however, non-dispatchable solar and wind cannot follow that practice. They supply power at random. So we need a distinguishment between dispatchable and non-dispatchable. And this chart indicates that upper half is non-dispatchable, wind and solar, could not displace this conventional dispatchable power. This is nuclear, coal, gas, and oil, those ones. So, say, even today, Germany needs, say, the conventional power plant as large as 130% of maximum demand, right? So, say, as a result, non-dispatchable power just added on the existing power plant. So that's to say, it caused excess generation capacity as large as 216 gigawatt. 216 gigawatt, it's huge. 2.7 times of maximum demand. This chart shows exactly what happened in Germany. This excess capacity causes many adverse effects, which I like to explain to you later. So they could attain the purpose to expand the power capacity, renewable capacity, but this chart shows their first aim, reduction of carbon dioxide emission, was unsuccessful. See? Please focus around this time span. From 2009, they expanded solar and wind very, very rapidly, expanded to, say, 100 gigawatt. So, say, they increased the capacity, but as a reality, they couldn't reduce carbon dioxide emission. Say, number of 2009, 907 million tons, and number of 2017, 906 million tons, same. So in the end, they couldn't reduce carbon dioxide. This say their emission is as large as 10 times of French. You may remember that figure, 10 times larger than France. So say Germany will not be able to attain this 2020 target either, and also 2030 target, because they don't have any measure anymore. That's say one result. And next is say dot 4, and feed-in tariff. Probably you know feed-in tariff. That and feed-in premium, fit and FIP. In both say measure, they set very high purchasing price, and difference between that's a higher purchasing price and very low market price. This difference are charged on customers as a name of surcharge. So as a result, this the household power rate in the turn of century, year 2000, it was just at 15 euro cents per kilowatt hour. It's already doubled, more than 30 euro cents. This is equivalent to 40 yen, by the way. It's much, much higher than metropolitan Tokyo area, where we have 26, 27 yen in average. 40 yen, how high it is. This is one of the highest family electricity price in the world. Another one is Denmark, by the way. And dot 5, solar and wind require backup thermal power plant. Thermal power plant, you may understand, because of intermittency and say, fluctuation, they need a backup plant. The backup plant actually thermal power plant. And say, fit and FIP prioritize, therefore, priority system of fit and FIP will eat up kilowatt hour of thermal power plant. And thermal power, in order to accommodate wind and solar power, they need to make sacrifice of their own kilowatt hour output. And so that causes a loss of sales quantity, okay? And on top of that, this chart shows, say, the sales price in the market down to almost 3 yen. This is equivalent to 3 yen per kilowatt hour. No power plant in the world can, say, be sustainable under this market condition. So, say, the reason why is, say, in Germany, same as Japan, the solar and wind power is purchased by transmission company. And transmission company cannot consume electricity by themselves, so they place that electricity into the wholesale market with zero price. Say, so they dump into market zero priced huge amount of wind and solar power. That's the reason why this is go down pressure. So say you may understand that those thermal power plant in Germany have got double punched. One punch is a reduction of their sales quantity. Another punch is, say, reduced or lowered sales price. It's double punched. So they are very, very in difficult position right now. They cannot survive under such circumstances. And as a matter of fact, say, major power companies in Germany have accumulated huge financial loss, a matter of fact. And say, today or tomorrow, you will heard news that, say, number 1 and number 2 company, power company, will restructure, reshuffle their, say, business. Number 1 company called Aeon, it's a huge company. They become solely, say, for distribution and say sales. I mean, sale of power, retail business. So say they lose number 1 generation power company. Okay, and so that's exact the phenomena they are facing now with. And intermittency of wind and solar causes this instability of the grid. This is export line and import line, the gap. This is excess electricity produced. They need to export that excess power to neighbor country. The neighbor country also need to sacrifice their thermal power plant, reduce their output. So in some time future, they will come to limitation. And then they face a big problem. And excess electricity, of course, raise, frequency of electricity and voltage of electricity. If voltage and frequency becomes depart from the controlled band, then it causes a blackout. So unstable. Another slide here, but I skipped this because of, say, time limitation. And as a conclusion, I can say that, their purpose, aim, all their purpose have not been fulfilled. First aim, reduction of carbon dioxide, they were unsuccessful. Second aim, improve economy, power economy, they were not. To the opposite, their power rate, up. And third purpose, more stable grid, also failing. So, I can say that all purpose was, unsuccessful. So the program of energy transformation in Germany has failed. That's the reason why, last point, I mentioned here, no basis for proposition of zero nuclear with displaced supply from renewables by Constitutional Democratic Party, Communist Party, Mr. Koizumi, Ms. Koike. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. One question, dispatchable, 日本語でなんていう
ディスパッチャブは日本語ではあまりないんですけどね、給電指令に応じられる、わかります？発電指令に応じられる。
配達できる。
はい、発電指令コントロールセンターがですね、あなたこういうふうに発電しなさいという指令を出すんです。オーダーを。
Okay.
インストラクション。それに従えないのがノンディスパッチャブル。
Does that clear up the meaning of
Dispatchable means variable depending on the command from the control center. Non-dispatchable is not that flexible.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Mr. Clark, just may interrupt you for 1 minute or half minute.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Ono for his very interesting discussion of the situation in Germany. Thank you.
Yeah, well, just make sure that our biographical data, three of us, bio and resume, should be in your hands. I just want to make sure that you have read or you have copies of our bio and resume, three of us. So
Good.
the reason why I skipped all my resume, they are already well written in English in your resume paper. So please go through the paper. Thank you.
I would like to add that his resume is very impressive. And now we call on Mr. Tomio Kawata, who's been involved very much in the nuclear cycle development. This is going beyond nuclear energy. It was Japan's ambitious plan to recycle and so not to become dependent on uranium imports. If I might.
Yeah, thank you.
I mention this because I come from Australia and we rely very much on uranium exports to Japan. And in fact, we have so much uranium that we almost can give it away. But Japan, for a while, was convinced that the world was not going to have uranium and therefore went to enormous lengths to develop this nuclear cycle, which technically is most interesting. And I'm sure that Mr. Kawata will
yes,
brief us on that.
Thank you for Clark Sensei for introduction, and also I thank you and other people for giving us such an opportunity to give you our own view in such a very controversial issues. Let me begin with the first one. This is related to the safety improvement in Japanese nuclear power plants, but I think this figure is self-explanatory enough. So let me just skip this one so that I can focus, or I can spend more time on the other subject. The second slide shows the nuclear capacity sorted, world nuclear capacity sorted by country and also by fuel cycle policy. And you can see in this slide that among big five 4 countries are engaged in reprocessing, and only one exception is the United States. And so, generally speaking, I can say that the country with large nuclear capacity tend to choose closed fuel cycle. And also, if you look at the other part, you can see the share of world installed capacity. About 46% of the capacity belongs to the countries engaged in reprocessing. But for instance, in January 19th, Asahi Shimbun published editorial to oppose the reprocessing business, telling that the most of the advanced countries have already abandoned closed fuel cycle. And I think if you look at this chart, it is a very distorted view, which gives some very bad image on nuclear closed fuel cycle. And there are reasons why countries with large nuclear power capacity tend to choose closed fuel cycle. Especially in Japan, we have good reasons to do so. For instance, compared with a direct disposal case, the closed fuel cycle enables to reduce the required space for high-level waste disposal by a factor about 3. And because Japan is very highly densely populated small country, it is a great benefit to us. And also, the closed cycle enables to reduce the long-term radiotoxicity. It is again help to reduce the barrier to acquire the public acceptance. And also, this option minimizes the need for spent fuel interim storage capacity in Japan. And also, closed cycle can avoid to create so-called plutonium mines, which impose growing and unpredictable risk of proliferation in future generation. And also, of course, this option, with this option, we can save nuclear fuel. And also, the experience in this area eventually lead the way to the future fast breeder reactor cycle. Next slide is on the economy of the nuclear closed fuel cycle. Japanese media often tells that the closed cycle is not economically competitive, and sometimes claiming that the cost of MOX fuel is about 9 times larger than that of regular uranium fuel, or the lifetime cost of reprocessing business is so huge. But those are just a part of the whole story. They never tell the whole story. If you look at if you compare the electricity generation cost, the penalty of the closed cycle compared with the direct disposal is less than 1 yen per kilowatt hour. And this penalty, I can say, is quite minuscule when compared with the wide range of the cost variation in other power generation system. And also, it is quite affordable if we consider the benefit I mentioned in the previous slide. One of the recent hot issues is associated with Japan's large stock of plutonium. And now Japanese media are chorusing that Japan holds 47 tons of plutonium, which is equivalent to 6,000 A-bombs. And I think this is a very distorted view to inflame public anxiety. Actually, Japan's plutonium is not weapon material, but fuel for power generation. It is so-called reactor-grade plutonium, which is totally unsuitable for use in modern nuclear arsenals for national defense. And of course, we will be able to build a crude explosive device. But Japan has no reason to do such silly things. We gain nothing. And even so, Japanese media insist to claim that Japan's plutonium is causing threat or anxiety to the rest of the world. And one of the technical problems associated with the reactor-grade plutonium is heat generation. If you use reactor-grade plutonium in so-called implosion bomb, it is just like you place 100-watt light bulb right in the center cavity of a large ball of chemical high explosive. So even craziest countries won't use such material for national defense. So you do not really seriously need to worry about plutonium in Japan. Of course, we have to maintain high level of the security to guard the material from theft. And also, media is telling that we have too much plutonium now with no way to consume it. Now we should refrain from further production. That means, of course, stop reprocessing. This figure shows the historical variation of the plutonium inventory of Japan and also the future forecast. Before the turn of the century, the inventory started to rise sharply due to the progress of reprocessing abroad. But in 2009, when we started MOX burning in light water reactors, we observed the clear decline in the inventory. But very unfortunately, 2 years later, Fukushima accident occurred, and eventually all the nuclear power plants were enforced to shut down. Then the inventory started to increase. However, we were able to restart MOX burning in 2016, about 2 years ago. Then now we can again observe the decline of the inventory. And at present, a total of 10 MOX burning reactors or power plants are licensed to burn plutonium as MOX fuel. And right now, 14 nuclear power plants were approved for restart. And among that 14, 4 reactors, MOX burning reactors. And also another 3 are waiting for the approval. So before we start the Rokkasho nuclear reprocessing plant, we will observe a fairly large amount of the reduction in our inventory. But of course, if once we start the Rokkasho operation, for a couple of years, we will observe the increase of the inventory. But as we expand the MOX burning capability, and especially with the startup of Oma nuclear power plant, that is a power plant which can burn plutonium in full MOX core, then we will able to observe a steady decrease in our plutonium stockpile. So I can say that we can control the plutonium inventory in good shape in long run. And my last slide is on the high-level waste disposal issues. Of course, Mr. Koizumi claimed that no place to dump in Japan, so zero nuclear is inevitable. And of course, his proposal was, I think, resulted from a political aftermath of the Fukushima accident, and also partly but it is also motivated from his very primitive view on the feasibility of the high-level waste disposal in Japan. Probably because he thinks that Japan is located on tectonically very, very active zone. However, I would like to show just one evidence to indicate that there should be suitable rock formation even in Japan to host the high-level waste repository. In Horonobe Underground Research Laboratory, owned by Japan Atomic Energy Agency, they measured the age of the groundwater sampled from the bedrock 300 meters below sea level. And it turned out it is older than million years old. That means this groundwater had stayed there for over million years without exchanging with the surface water. So if you put your vitrified waste in such environment, the water, groundwater, contaminated or not, the groundwater cannot reach to the biosphere in, say, 100,000 years. So this clearly tells that we can conduct the high-level waste disposal, even in this Japanese environment. And this is my last slide, and I would like to conclude my talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open the floor for questions. Yes, at the back.
Süddeutsche Zeitung, Germany. I first wanted to say I disagree with most of what you said, the three of you. And the situation in Germany is very much distorted by you, Mr. Ono. But I'm not going to argue about that. I have a very simple question. Back in the 1970s and 1980s, when Japan was proud of its industry, the MITI, as the ministry was called, was distinguishing between sunset industry and sunrise industry. And even proponents of nuclear power agree that nuclear power is probably a sunset industry. And now you advocate to put trillions of yen into a sunset industry. Isn't that a recipe for wasting money instead of advancing the Japanese industry?
Sir, you agree?
Disagree. Disagree.
Of course. And your name, sir? ドイツから参りましたナイテルと申します。おっしゃったことにほとんど異論を唱えたいと思いますし、小野様のプレゼンによりましてドイツの状況はだいぶ歪められた描写をされたと言ってもと申し上げたいと思います。ただ単純に質問をさせていただきますと、1970年代および80年代日本が高度経済成長時代にあったところ、経済産業省通産省の方でその社用産業とそれから成長産業と区別したところ、当時すでに原子力は社用産業という位置づけであったと承知しております。そして今になってまた何兆円という金額を投じてその原子力を推進しようというのは大きな無駄遣いではないでしょうか。And I'm not sure to whom the question is addressed.
Thank you very much for your question. I'd like to respond to your question as follows. This is the same situation, Germany and Japan. Germany is, of course, you have so-called brown coal, but it's very disadvantageous for, global warming. You may not be able to use in the long future your brown coal. And in Japan, we don't have any coal, any oil, any gas resources. Same thing. You don't agree with that? Then I say,
Nobody has coal for the next 50 years if you want to...
No, I don't say that. So we need something else other than fossil fuel. Same thing for you. Same thing. And if we don't have any fossil fuel, then how come? Do you know that the currently operating oil field in the world, the production quantity will be shrink to one-third in the year 2040. Only 22 years ahead. You don't believe that? Then you should read the annual energy outlook report of IEA. They repeatedly emphasize that point in the past several years. So they have all data of oil field over all the world. They are pretty sure that currently operating oil field production will be shrink down to one-third in not so far distant future. How come? How do you solve that problem? In that sense, in that only one sense, we need nuclear power to cope with that type of shrinkage of production of fossil fuel. You may hope that you can expand gas-fired power plant, but these days nobody make an investment because it's not feasible, it's not profitable at all. Do you point out any new power plant to be constructed before 2022? If so, I can say to some extent, understand your view, but there is no way for you, even for you, to cope with that, shrinking fossil fuel supply. So you may expect gas supply from Russia without limitation. Oh, it's miserable. Nonsense. No? to rely upon totally on Russia. But your utility 2.0, this is a new concept, utility 2.0. That you put solar and wind at the central portion, and other facilities should help that wind and solar. That's a utility 2.0, new concept. But for that purpose, you totally rely upon gas thermal power plant. Why not? You may rely upon, of course, brown coal, but I don't like it. You may not like it. So that's the reason why we need nuclear power in preparation for, say, oil shock number 3.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
May I?
Yes, please.
社用産業についてのお答えはいかがでしょうか。社用産業に。
Yeah, だから、short question, answer to your question is that we do not think it is a waste to invest in nuclear energy. At least the existing nuclear plants, power plants, altogether more than 40 reactors at present. We should be able to restart more than 30. Otherwise, we won't be able to attain the 20 to 22% share of nuclear energy by 2030. Nuclear energy, particularly restarting the existing nuclear power plant, is very competitive. That's not a waste of money. It's not even declining industry.
Thank you very much. Yes, Kawata-san.
Yes. Let me add just one comment. Of course, for instance, we paid almost 2.9 trillion yen in building Rokkasho reprocessing plant. That is huge, huge. However, of course, Japan is also devoted for develop renewable energy. And this year, the government paid 2.7 trillion yen under the feed-in tariff system. 2.7 trillion yen. It is very close to the 2.9 whole Rokkasho construction cost. So, and probably next year, the government has to pay close to 3 trillion. And of course, most of the money comes from the people, And this money means for the government just paying such huge money as we can build Rokkasho reprocessing plant, one Rokkasho reprocessing plant each year. So we are paying such big money to the renewable energy too. So you have to have a fair comparison between these things. That is just my comment.
Okay, any other questions? Please. Name and affiliation, please.
Martin Körling, I'm with the German financial daily Handelsblatt. I would like to ask you about the political feasibility of first the restart and, of course, possible new plans or necessary new plans. First, basically it's three small questions. First, one question I have is in this regard: why were so many reactors concentrated in so few power plants in Japan? And by doing this, basically also concentrating the risk if something goes wrong. I think it might have to do something with political resistance in the past. Now, after the accident, the political resistance might have even risen. I wonder how many new plants how many new plants will be necessary in your point of view, and how feasible is it that these new plants will be really, that the politicians will be able to push through these plans if they really want to do it?
The second point was new clients.
Plants.
Kaneko-san.
Okay. 2つドイツの金融
New
誌、ドイツの金融誌を代表いたしますマーティンと申します。I'm sorry, so I didn't catch your last name. マーティン・コリムと申します。2つほど質問させていただきますが、まず再稼働についての政治的な実効性、それから必要あらば2点目ですが、その新施設の、新規のその、建設、が可能なのかどうかという点を主に2つ伺いたいと思いますが、さらに細かく質問を差し上げると、その日本の場合は、数少ないその発電所の中に、原子炉が数少ない発電所に原子炉が集中しているという事情があり、すなわちそれは逆に言えば何かあればリスクも高まるという状況だと思います。でかつては政治的な抗議運動デモなどもあったため、そのような結果になったかもしれませんが、またそういったデモなどが最近活発化している中、その新たな原子炉プラントを設置することは政治家としてどのくらいプッシュできるものなのか、そして推し進めることができるものなのかどうか教えてください。お考えを。
Mr. Kaneko is an expert on the future of the industry here. I'll call on him to give us a reply.
Well, thank you very much for your question. It's very difficult and important questions, and I wish I had more time, but my short answer is that I think as far as the restart of the existing nuclear plants, I think, as I said, it's very economical, still very highly competitive, as compared with other sources of energy. So, about the political condition, political move, I think it's all up to the politicians, including Mr. Abe. You know, right now in Niigata-ken, for instance, we have 7 reactors there owned by TEPCO. All of them are very beautiful and very new. In fact, the 2 of them, the finest and the most recent model. But the governor is dead against the restart of those units. So it's actually the matter of political decision, political will. And politicians, you know, like to get elected in the general election. They like to play the tune that the electorate wanted to hear. So the governor of Niigata-ken, for instance, I think he's an opportunist or populist, to say frankly. So the important thing is that the political decision will be taken at the highest level of the government, highest level of the country, Prime Minister and his cabinet. And then I think that all the politicians and local politicians and local people will probably follow. So we want to create the positive political momentum toward the more use of nuclear energy or restarting existing nuclear power plants. So we've been urging the Prime Minister and all other ministers and politicians to say so in clear one voice to the general public. Otherwise, I'm afraid the popular people are very reluctant, very pessimistic, and soon the momentum for nuclear energy in this country will be gradually lost. That would be a pity.
If I may just...
I think the one other question is why do we have so many reactors in one place? Well, it's a matter of economic, I think, and political, technical reason. Unlike Germany, which is quite different because Germany is an inland country and Japan is an insular country, and we have 4 the country is surrounded by ocean, so we can build the nuclear power plant on the seaside, on the shore. Whereas in Germany, you have to build inland, and therefore you have to have the steam cooler instead of running water for cooling the reactors. But anyway, from now on, in the future, I think it is better to locate the nuclear power plant more widely throughout the country so as to reduce the risk of nuclear accidents.
Right.
And I think it's probably a matter of a small reactors, so-called small modular reactors, that's being studied very vigorously in United States and in Europe, particularly in UK. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes. A name and affiliation, please.
My name is Patrick Welter. I'm sorry, I'm with the third German newspaper. I'm with Frankfurter Allgemeine.
What, louder?
I'm with Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, another German newspaper. If you assume that for political reasons nuclear power would have no future in Japan, what would be the least cost-intensive way to get energy enough energy for Japan?
I'm sorry, last point.
If you assume that for political reasons nuclear power has no more future in Japan.
No, I said the idea of future.
Yeah, but
No.
just assume, for the sake of the
there are
argument,
a lot of future.
what would be the best energy solution for Japan in case you can't use nuclear energy?
これは仮の話ではありますが、政治的な理由で原子力にもはや日本で将来がないという事態になったときに、最もそのコスト効率の良い日本でのエネルギー源とは何になりますでしょうか。
My again short answer to your question is that we do not think the nuclear energy is doomed. We still believe that nuclear energy has a lot of potential. It's very much depend on the political will, as you said. So as long as we have a political will and popular support, we will be able to continue the use of nuclear energy. Now, I think if, under the assumption, the big if nuclear energy is no good and useless and bound to disappear, well, probably we'll have to use hydropower, and for the time being, thermal power, coal, LNG, and oil, of course. Our renewable energy, like solar and wind or bio, are very much limited in their capacity, unfortunately. It's very nice, sounds very all right and eco-friendly, so we like to give our support, but unfortunately, realistically, our renewable energy cannot be a substitute for nuclear energy. So in a very long time to come in the future, we will have to rely on nuclear energy for main basic source of energy. As I said, as you probably know, the government has already decided to rely on nuclear energy up to 20% to 20%, whereas renewable is 22 to 24%. But that, I think, is very, idealistic. And we do not think that the renewable energy cannot achieve that goal by 2030. But we have probably other renewables like hydro. That's too bad, but the renewable energy is natural energy like solar, wind, cannot be a substitute for nuclear energy or other conventional conventional thermal power. Okay?
Do we have any more questions from regular members? If not, oh yes, please.
Thank you, Errol Ahmed. I have a research company.
Sorry, are you a regular member?
Yeah, I am.
What is? Give your affiliation.
I write, so I don't have a single.
You mean freelance?
Yes, right. If you call it like that. 日本語でいいですか？英語でいいですか？
どちらでも。
If it's in Japanese, I think I have to interpret it into English anyway. So.
Okay. Mr. Koizumi had a very simple point. He said nuclear power is not safe. It's not about when there's an accident, people die. We all die one day, and sometimes there are accidents, planes, automotive illnesses as well. When there's an accident, you can't use the land. It's gone for many, many years. That was the original point. What do you say on that?
小泉元首相は分かりやすいメッセージを打ち出していらっしゃって、それが原子力は安全ではないというメッセージです。で、単にその事故が起きるということ、それによって死者が出るということには限らず、つまり他にも飛行機事故やそれから疾病などで、いずれ人は死ぬわけですから、そうではなくて、その1回原子力の事故があると、その土地が長いこと使えないというのが問題であるという提起をされておりますが、その点について、その土地が長く使えないという点についてどのようなお考えでしょうか。
私が答えますかね。Again, in time, I think Mr. Kawata should be able to.
I just skipped this important slide. This tells the current status of the enhanced safety measures taken after the Fukushima accident. And I just showed a typical example. And one is, of course, we in many nuclear power plant sites, they build a great wall to prevent from the attack of tsunami, large tsunami. Of course, that depends on the site. If the elevation is already very high, they don't need this one. But most of the important point is that after the accident, we implemented multiple and diverse backup system for electric power supply and also water injection system, so that we can prevent core meltdown at any cost. This is a very important point. And secondary, especially for BWR plant, we are implementing filtered vent system. With this system, the radiation release to air will be limited to 1/100th of the amount we had in Fukushima case. So in that case, even in a case of a severe accident, immediate and prolonged evacuation will no longer be necessary. Of course, in precaution, we'll have temporary evacuation, but probably, practically speaking, that will be really unnecessary thing. So with such significant increase in safety of our nuclear power plant, I think there is enough room for Japanese to accept nuclear power options. And also, I'd like to comment that currently the oil price is staying quite low, and probably it will continue for some time. But once the price goes up, Japanese people will be more aware of the cost of the electricity generation. So the sun is, as somebody says, setting now, but depending on the other situations, there is a good chance for sun to rise again.
Okay, again, my brief remark is that Mr. Koizumi's, whatever he said, I think his is a so-called insho sosa, image operation, image manipulation. He emphasizes the serious aspect of the accident. Fukushima accident was indeed very serious. But remember, in the past 7 years, we have done a lot of effort to improve and enhance the safety of nuclear power plants under the strict rule of the regulatory authority. But unfortunately, Japanese media does not report much about the developments in efforts to modernize or improve the nuclear safety. So you see, people still tend to believe that the same kind of nuclear accidents, like one in Fukushima, can happen in the future. But of course, that will be disastrous. But I'm sure we will not be able to, run the risk of that type of accidents anymore. So we will do everything possible to eliminate it. I think nuclear power reactors in Japan, even after the Fukushima, is one of the safest in the world. But that the people here do not know the realities in other countries, other parts of the world. But having visited all the power plants in the world myself, the Japanese nuclear safety is probably the best in the world. The point is, important thing is that people are not willing to realize the facts that the nuclear power plants being drastically modernized and improved after the accident, in the wake of the accident. I will refer you to point 3 of my resume, and of course, more explanation in the book. Thank you.
If I may summarize, the question was, in fact, what happens about destruction to land, right, around nuclear plants after accidents? And their reply is that there will not be an accident because, actually, it's included in this book, a large number of technical changes have been made which they believe, will prevent future nuclear accidents. I might add that on the Nuclear Safety Commission, I was told repeatedly that there could never be nuclear accidents in Japan because the Japanese were so technically clever that there would be accidents in Russia and in America where people were not so technically clever. To be honest, if I may give my own opinion, if you read the material in this book about the changes which have been made to prevent the damage from nuclear energy, you will be impressed. Question? Yes. Okay.
Associate member, name is Ikubo, and thank you for very interesting presentation, and thank you for effective chairing, Mr. Clark, for the discussion. My question relates to the safety. I guess the general public is very concerned that there's the probability of accidents in any operation cannot be zero. So my question is, what organizations, government or non-government, really studying to prevent the accident from happening? And also, as Mr. Clark said, Japanese engineers are clever, so accident will not happen. That shinwa, I guess, are unrealistic. So my question is, two questions. One is, what institutions are really studying to prevent the accident from happening? And also, what are the contingencies to reduce the impact if that happens? The second question is, as Mr. Clark mentioned, this peculiar mentality of Japanese. If everything is done perfectly, nothing is going to go wrong. Now, that mentality puzzles me. And if you have any comments on that, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
アソシエイトメンバーの生保と申します。まずはプレゼンターの皆様の有意義なプレゼンテーション、ご発表、それからクラーク先生の卓越した司会業に感謝申し上げます。私の質問は安全性についてであります。世論としてはやはり事故の可能性はゼロではない、いかなる稼働状況におきましても事故の可能性はゼロではないという考え方がどうしても根強くあります。それを鑑みてどのような機関、つまり政府系あるいは非政府系、どのような機関が事故再発防止の研究検討を行っているのでしょうか。で2点目は、クラーク先生もおっしゃいましたとおり、日本の安全神話というものがありまして、これは私は非現実的だと、かなり非現実的だと思っております。で2つ質問、またもう一度申し上げますと、再発防止に努める機関があるのであれば、どのようなところがあり、そして万が一起きた時のそのコンティンジェンシープラン、危機管理計画、つまりそのインパクト、事故の影響を抑えるためにはどのような危機管理計画があるのかというのが1点目。で2点目は、すべてを万事よろしくやれば何事も起きないという発想は非常に奇妙だと私は思っており、やはり疑問に思いますので、その点についても何かご見解ありましたらお願いいたします。
Sorry, I should have mentioned that the book doesn't say there will not be accidents. What they say emphasizes if there is an accident, there are measures which can be taken which will reduce the harm from the accident, which is quite a very interesting point to me anyway.
ご質問はどのような対策があり得るかということです。事故が起きた時のインパクト。
Well, thank you very much. Very stimulating question.
Any other questions, please? Yes. Sorry, a regular. Okay. What's that? Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, but before that.
He didn't receive an answer. There has been no answer.
Okay, of course. Okay, Martin, you want to ask a question? Oh, sorry.
Okay, again, time is limited, so let me be very brief. I think it's a philosophical discussion, I'm sure. It's philosophical because Fukushima accident happened as a result of the earthquake and tidal wave, tsunami. It happens only, trying to say that, once in 1,000 years. So it did happen. It did happen, and it did cause a lot of very serious damage, true. But we have to be, cool-minded and be able to make a proper judgment on the basis of fact and historical fact and scientific facts. I think the Japanese nuclear safety is very firmly established, particularly under the new rule by Nuclear Regulatory Authority, NRA, which is separate from METI, Ministry of Economy and Trade. So it should be able to make a good, solid decision on the safety. And it's been doing quite good job. In fact, they do a good job that they are very slow in permitting the restart of the reactors. There are only 5 at the moment. So I think we like to believe that nuclear power plant is very safe, relatively safe, as compared with other sources of energy, and by far the most safest in the world. So if we start thinking about this very hypothetical case, well, you begin to be very pessimistic and negative. But we have to live as a country, just like as any human beings. We have to sacrifice some of our benefits so that we can gain maximum benefit. So I think we can make a very good argument in favor of nuclear energy along those lines, but it will take a lot of time. Let me stop here. But as I said, the Japanese nuclear regulatory authority is very efficient, well-made, well-equipped already, that they will be able to cope with a situation, bad situation in the future, if they should ever arise. That's my hope. No one except that God can say.
And just at the back. Yeah.
Süddeutsche Zeitung, Neidot again. The Kurokawa report for the Diet says the Fukushima disaster is a man-made disaster. Now, do you think Kurokawa is a populist like Mr. Koizumi and Mrs. Koike? And then Koizumi says, after Chernobyl, he asked the specialists, can this happen in Japan? The answer was, no, Japan everything is safe. You are doing exactly the same now. Why should people believe you now when people didn't believe you or your colleagues at that time?
国会事故調の黒川レポートには福島は人災であると記されています。黒川委員長はその小泉元首相、小池知事のようにポピュリストだと思われますでしょうか。で、実際小泉元首相はチェルノブイリの事故の後に日本で同じことがあり得るかと聞かれたところ、いえ、日本では全て安全なのでそんなことはないという返答があったそうですが、なぜこの時点になって皆様のようなご見解を世論は人は信じるのでしょうか、信じるべきなのでしょうか。その当時も疑いがあったところ、今なおのことかと思いますが、いかがでしょうか。
Well, いいですか。I think again, this question is very delicate, but let me try to answer. I think the accident was very serious, and Mr. Koizumi was right that the people was upset, or in fact very disappointed. But remember, there is an important difference between TMI, 3 Mile Island accident, and Chernobyl accident, and Fukushima accident. Fukushima accident, I mean, the two other TMI and Chernobyl were caused by human error, mistakes of the operators on the spot. Whereas the case of Fukushima, it was triggered by the tsunami. It destroyed all these contingency, emergency diesel engines. That's why we lost the water for cooling the reactors. So you see, the way that the typical officers and operators acted in defense of the reactor at that time was a little bit, well, in fact, very disappointing from our point of view. And I'm sure every Japanese watching the TV are very disappointed or very, in fact, very infuriated the poor way they handled the case. But we have learned a very bitter lesson after the Fukushima accident, and I like to believe that the Japanese engineers, technicians, and professionals have improved their knowledge based upon the experience of Fukushima. Now, I think I'm personally convinced that nuclear safety in this country is quite safe, and the important thing is that people should learn more about the reality of the present situation of nuclear power industry. You know, Fukushima accident is one, but it's in the past. Of course, the sufferers are still suffering, but as an accident, it finished. From now on, we have to rebuild the credibility of Japanese nuclear industry.
Martin, you had a... Sorry, after Martin.
Martin Colling again. You mentioned this 1 in 1,000 year natural risk or natural disaster in this case. After the accident, we had a small roundtable with the head of the German Nuclear Regulation Authority, and he said that in Germany, not even the nuclear power industry would accept a risk of basically 10 to the power of 3 for a nuclear accident, and that he was surprised that the risk acceptance in Japan was so high. From your point of view, how high, what is the appropriate risk, the acceptable risk probability, and how high is the risk or probability of a nuclear accident in Japan at the moment, after the new measures were taken?
マーティン・コリンと申しますが、先ほど1000年に1回の事故であったとおっしゃったんですけども、あの事故の福島の事故の後、ドイツの規制当局の関係者との円卓会議に同席しましたところ、ドイツの場合、その許容されるリスクは10の3乗であるということで、それに対して日本はかなりそのリスクの許容度が大きいということに驚いておられました。でそこで質問ですが、リスクはどのくらい許容できるものなのか、また対策が原子力に関して、また対策が講じられた後の原子力に関する、原子力事故に関するリスクの許容度はどのくらいとお考えでしょうか。
どうするか、まあ要するに数学的な話だからあんまり
今10の目指してる
マイナス30、10のマイナス30です。
Did you say 10 to the power of minus 3?
Well, may I answer
失礼
to some extent?
通訳のがマイナスを聞き逃しまして失礼いたしました。
Well, say Kurokawa report, as you mentioned, but it's not totally correct, in my view. Sure, because in the report they say a cause of accident by earthquake. Their report include that part. It's not by earthquake. By earthquake, still Fukushima Unit 1 was operating as normal. But when the tsunami came over the plant, then emergency generator stopped. So that's a cause was. It's a common say, knowledge among Japanese. Cause was by tsunami, not earthquake. So Kurokawa report on that particular point, it's a mistake. So you cannot mention that Kurokawa report almighty. It's not. And however, say your second question, to what extent? Of course, 10 to minus 6. 10 to minus 6 IAEA standard, isn't it? So say NRA's new standard, new safety regulation, of course, to cover that standard. Same thing in Germany.
Thank you. Any more questions? Sorry, you have a question.
I'm Hiroki Fujita, a freelance journalist. Thank you for your presentation. And this is one of the good way to tell the people your ideas. But in fact, right now, even the LDP members, they're rather reluctant to go ahead with the.
Can we have a question, please?
To go ahead with the nuclear power generation because it doesn't earn votes from the people. How are you going to change LDP members, former like a pro-nuclear generation, that members to agree with your proposal or your observation of the current situation?
今の通訳です。藤田様でよろしいでしょうか。フリーランスジャーナリストの藤田と申しますが、人々にそのお考えを訴えるにはこのようなやり方は有効と思いますが、自民党ですらその再稼働に現在消極的な向きがあります。でかつては原子力推進派だった自民党の関係者をどのようにして説得させるとお考えでしょうか。
よろしいですか。私
Oh,
Well, to that particular question, may I say that last week I stand on that briefing
LDP.
to the LDP people, and they agree with my view. That is exactly I presented you people today. So they don't believe, almighty, such as the almighty idea of renewable energy. They understand what exactly renewable energy is. So under that environment or condition, Japan will need for the long future as well nuclear power. That's the basic understanding by LDP. Sure.
If we have no more questions, and could you make it very brief? We're over time. Do we have time?
It's over.
Yes, please.
Okay.
A very brief question.
My name is Kurt Sieber, Associate Member. Thank you for the presentation, which, is, in my opinion, at least as fake as the other one from the other side. We should look at the situation in a less emotional and more logical way. Nuclear power, in the end, will die because it is not competitive anymore. That is the ultimate conclusion. Just ask Toshiba; they know very well. If you just go by accounting standards, your figures may well work out. But if you include all the trillions of yen which the government is spending to clean up, if you think about the problem of waste disposal, nuclear waste disposal, which is not solved, and the can is being kicked forward every year. It says, well, it's in another 5 years we'll have a problem. But politically, this is a big problem for Japan. Also, the decommissioning costs are not properly considered, and so if you include all those costs, the connected with nuclear power, do you really still, that's the question, do you really think that nuclear power will still be competitive? If I may add just one more thing, renewables. What you say, my daughter, by the way, is an oil executive in Texas, so we know quite well that how the situation is on fossil fuels, and it's finite. It will go down, and it will go down. And the companies who are involved in oil and oil refining, they know very well that they have to expand or to change their environment. But you exclude what you have shown about Germany, about solar and wind is totally correct in terms of quantity, and this is a fantastic opportunity for Japan. You mentioned in one of your reports only 6% of Japan's energy is coming from Japan. But with nuclear, even without nuclear, which is not really local, but of course it's also imported. But all the rest of the fossil fuels are imported. So you have a great chance to make Japan more independent of import and have a more safe environment, and particularly split up among different energies. But you cannot avoid to have solar and wind into in the energy system. And there are two, again, as you pointed out very correctly, there are 2 points which the two big weaknesses of the two ones, the solar and the wind, is that they are intermittent. That is one thing which is in the process of being solved. Japan is foremost in the world in the development of energy storage. Just ask Panasonic; they know quite well. And the other thing is, and that is the access to the grid, is indeed one of the major problems for renewables, and the nuclear village makes every effort to make sure that they are not getting on the grid. So the 20 to 22% or 20 to 24% is quite possible if the energy system or the energy mix as a whole is being properly brought into the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Long question, but some good points. Can we have a short answer, please?
Yeah, short answer.
通訳よろしいですか？
So, coming back from your question, real question, say, weakness or intermittency, you of course agree with that. So, say, in the long future, can we, our country, rely upon them? That's the point, I have described this afternoon. And in that term, say, we do say introducing solar and wind renewables to best available effort. I mean, to best available extent. And you know that Japan is the second leading solar power country. So we have second largest power capacity of solar in the world. So that's the way we are doing the effort to introduce solar and wind. It's true. And also, at the same time, we try to expand nuclear power because it's a domestic source of power. Both are domestic source. So our aim is to have 44% of electricity we like to have from our own source. Okay? So we are doing effort, and we admit that we are not against renewables. But I pointed out, renewables, especially solar and wind, has some limitation. In my view, 20% is probably the maximum for Japan. For Germany, maybe 25%. I predict that. Not forever, expand 30, 40, 50%. Cannot do that because that is the non-dispatchable energy source. Okay. So second, your question. What's that?
Total cost of.
Cost.
Total cost.
廃棄物処理ですとか除染作業に何兆円費やしているということも入れるといかがでしょうか。
Cost-wise, already Mr. Kawata described that. Said, in comparison to other source of power, nuclear is probably the most competitive.
Even if we have included all these.
Of course, for instance,
yes.
In this chart, the cost for nuclear includes all the decommissioning cost, waste disposal cost, and also the compensation payment for in case of the accident.
Reparation, damage reparation.
Preparatory, yeah. So all the things are already included in this cost estimation.
あと再生可能エネルギーにもっと日本も目を向けてはいかがでしょうか。技術
いやそれ今答え
よろしいですか。はい。
Yeah, ちょっとI think there is some misunderstanding. We are not against the further development of renewable solar, wind. We are all for it. But they are saying that they are putting a final period end to nuclear industry. Finish. Zero means that nuclear energy will have to disappear. But I think that's too far. We believe in the nuclear, the energy-based mix. So far, before the Fukushima accident, we are very well divided among several sources of energy. Nuclear energy playing major part, and other conventional energies. etc. After the accident, nuclear energy went almost zero, but it has to be up to the former pre-March 11 level, I hope. Not beyond that, but at least 20 to 20 some percent. So that will be the best energy mix, and we are all for renewable energy to grow fast. But there is a misunderstanding that somehow, I think perhaps it is largely because of effective propaganda and eloquence of Mr. Koizumi, etc., that people tend to believe that the renewable energy can perfectly play the role of nuclear energy, etc., conventional energy. I think that is very wrong. The renewable energy is desirable, very good looking, but it is definitely insufficient. So we have to provide electricity from using all sources of energy, and then we have to increase the self-independence beyond 6% at the moment.
Thank you very much. Well, an interesting talk, and I'd like to thank our speakers in a traditional manner of a one-year usage of this club, free of charge. One for Mr. Kawata.
Kawata-san.
One for Mr. Kaneko and yourself.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Good, thank you.
Thank you very much.